You're watching The Miranda Show on WAFF 48.
I'm Miranda Bolden. I chose to build my company Logicor in one of the world's leading science and technology business centers right here in Huntsville, Alabama. Successful entrepreneurs and innovators excel here, and now you get to meet them. Hear the stories that lead to their success and the secrets that will help you thrive right here on The Miranda Show. Welcome to The Miranda Show. We're glad to have you join us tonight. Our guest is Mr. Guy Juzang. Mr. Guy Juzang is a seasoned professional, a business leader, and a man of many talents. And we're excited tonight to hear about his experiences and have him to share his words of wisdom, all to help you thrive right here on The Miranda Show. So Guy, thank you for coming.
My pleasure to be here, Miranda.
Absolutely. So we want to learn about Guy and the man that you are and kind of how you came to be such a great success in business. So we'll start by just kind of telling us where you're from.
I'm a Millie brat, actually. My dad was career Air Force. So you can imagine we lived in a lot of different places, even including Europe. So I grew up with jets flying over base, you know, but mainly we spent time in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Fantastic.
But even though my parents are from Alabama, Mobile and Montgomery.
Oh, so your parents are from here.
They are.
Okay, fantastic. So you've done some amazing things throughout your career. As a matter of fact, you're a businessman who owns about 3 companies currently. Tell us about those 3 companies.
Well, actually, the way it started was I got a systems engineering job with IBM after my MBA. And so then I started getting into the entrepreneurial set. Right now, I currently have a company, 7J, that I'm actually consulting and doing work for the aerospace, aviation, helicopters, Apache, Black Hawk, just bringing technology that will increase the time that the airframe can stay in the air, decreasing the maintenance costs, those kinds of things.
And this is certainly the town for that kind of thing, I would say.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely, the Rocket City, as they say.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as a child, what was your first job? Because I like to understand kind of the person and what shapes that person. And a lot of that is shaped as you grow up, right?
Sure.
You have these same aspirations as an adult. What was your first job as a youngster?
So my dad was, he had actually 9 children, and my mom was an educator. He was in civil engineering. So my first job was actually at the commissary. I was bagging groceries. And I loved to get the tips that people would give, and I'd come home with a pocket full of change, so I'd be pretty happy.
You got to make sure everyone tips, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So that was my first job, but it required me to be there on time. It required me to dress appropriately, and it started the character development that I needed to be successful in life.
Great, great. And so as you grow older, where did you go to college? Tell us about that, as well as your career to choose what major you pursued.
Okay. Well, actually, being on Air Force bases, there wasn't a lot to do. So either you would go into become a good bowler or sports, athletics. So my parents put me into football and to track. So I started there, and that really led me to learn to be disciplined, to learn to work on in a teamwork environment, and so that's how I started. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I also understand you wanted to pursue a career with the NFL.
I actually did.
What team and what happened with that?
Yeah, so as I matriculated on to high school, I continued to play football, and I actually won scholarships. I had several scholarships to Kansas University, University of New Mexico State. And so I took a football scholarship as a wide receiver at the University of New Mexico. So I started the first 2 years successfully. And then actually, I thought there was some unfair things going on with who they were playing, so I actually boycotted. And interestingly, my mom heard about it all the way in Germany. And she said, "You weren't a part of that boycott, were you, Guy?" And I said, "Yes, I was, Mom." And ultimately, I lost my scholarship.
Oh, no.
But anyway, you know, God has a plan for our lives.
Absolutely.
So I took my credits all the way to Montgomery, where I graduated at Alabama State, actually, got my HBCU experience. And so it only took me 2 years, and I wanted to graduate on time, so I took sociology as a major. But I had a propensity for math. And I had many math classes also.
Okay, fantastic. So, so math, as we look at math and getting into the STEM fields, we have students that are aspiring entrepreneurs.
Yes.
How has math helped you in your career?
Oh, absolutely. It has helped. I think when you think methodologically, you think in steps and in order. This thing needs to happen before this needs to happen. I think it trains your mind to be disciplined, to think about program management, to think about software development, engineering. So putting things in the right steps and in order and at the right time is very important.
Okay, great. So let's move forward a little bit. So after you graduated college, I understand you took a position over at IBM.
Yes.
And I'm assuming at the time IBM was a fantastic company to work for. Tell us about that experience.
IBM means I've been moved, because like a pastor, they move you around a lot. But fortunately, I was stable in Houston, Texas. And so I covered oil companies and chemical companies. And what I did was I provided the technology that IBM offered to run an efficient office or to manage the engineering or manufacturing. So I learned the applications. I did some software development in COBOL and Fortran back in the day. And it was a great experience. As they say, it's a great place to start with IBM.
Absolutely, absolutely. So understand when you were at IBM, you took a marketing course, and that's kind of, you know, how you learned to develop business and grow as a corporate leader. Tell us about that.
Yes, IBM offered a very prestigious course for a whole year. As a matter of fact, you didn't make any money for the corporation. You were just going to school, basically. So I went to school a whole year. They made you code, and your coding and your presentations had to meet a certain standard to even graduate. And if you didn't graduate, you were done.
You were done.
So it was a very stressful situation to start off my first career.
Fantastic. And I'm sure, again, that spurred your business development side, of course.
Absolutely.
So fast forward a little bit. So when we come back, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'd like to understand what brought you to Huntsville and kind of how you got started with your business, Infinity Technology. So we'll be back in a moment after the break, joining Mr. Guy Juzang to talk about his company, Infinity Technology.
Watching The Miranda Show on WAFF 48.
Welcome back, folks. Joining us tonight, we have Mr. Guy Juzang, and we'll continue our conversation as we learn about his company, Infinity Technology. So Guy, let's continue our conversation. So what brought you to Huntsville, and talk to us about that and Infinity Technology as well.
Well, I miraculously came to Huntsville. I was actually going to hot Atlanta. The job I had in Culver City, LA, was actually downsized, and I was the last one hired. But the company was booming across the country, so there were plenty of positions. So I looked in the computer to find my position. I was honing in on Atlanta because my future wife might be there, and I heard how, you know, all these women were there. So anyway, I thought I was going to Atlanta. So I came in to take my receipts to my manager for my U-Haul and the expenses, you know, to get reimbursed. And I said, I'm on my way to hot Atlanta. And the manager looked at me and said, oh, Guy, there's a mistake. The regional manager is in Atlanta, but the position is in Huntsville, Alabama. And my jaw dropped because my parents are from Alabama, like I said.
Yes.
And I really wasn't impressed with Montgomery and Mobile. And I wasn't looking to come to Alabama at all.
Now, we've come a long way since then, right?
Yeah, that's true. Huntsville's a little different, but judging from those previous cities, I wasn't really interested. So my jaw dropped and I was really disappointed. But my wife, Alicia, who I have to give a lot of credit to for the success that we've enjoyed, she was praying for a man, even if he had to come all the way from California. I couldn't believe it. So anyway, I ended up in Huntsville that way.
Okay. So Infinity Technology, how was that born?
So speaking of my wife, she worked for Dynetics as a modeling and simulation programmer for 8 years. And with my IBM background, we thought it would be a good idea to start a tech firm. So we did. We took our little pensions and we started the company. It was a small, humble amount of money. And I remember we used to always get excited when we would hear the fax machine, because that meant that possibly a purchase order was coming in. The first one. So the first one was from Mount Santo Chemical in Decatur, actually. And we set up their computer system to manage their material safety data sheets and networking on their shop floor and their manufacturing plant. So that's how we got started.
Fantastic. So did you do all of the initial marketing and kind of growing the business initially?
Yes, that's a good question, actually. And personalities are so important, and understanding personalities. And now as I look back, that sociology and psychology background helped me to understand a little bit about personalities. My wife is very phlegmatic. She's very organized, detailed. Yes. Of course, she's, the umbilical cord, having 4 children, she's looking out for the children and the family first, whereas I'm looking out more for the business, thinking it will take care of the family. So, yes. Personalities being different, we actually butted heads at times about how to do things. Should we mortgage the house to get the credit line? How much time should we spend, with family versus company? So we started the company that way. It was challenging at first to also work with your wife and go home with your wife, 24/7, if
yes.
you will.
So you mentioned possibly mortgaging the house. You also mentioned having a small pension fund.
Right.
As entrepreneurs, it's often difficult to come up with that funding for small startups. Exactly, at what point did you reach out to a bank, or at what point did things start to move for you financially?
I do remember starting off with a small credit line. I always wanted to have a backup bank also, because I know how banks are. So we started off with a small credit line, and then eventually started using some SBA to back up the loans, and that allowed us a little more liquidity to manage, financing the contracts that we ultimately won. Okay,
fantastic. So tell us just real quick, what did Infinity do? Tell us about the services that you guys provided.
A lot like Logicor, we were into mainly integration, software applications. We did networking. We got our big break when Lockheed Martin came to town looking for some companies that would help them develop the operating system of the F-22 fighter jet that was just starting. Yes. And because of our software background, we raised to the top of getting that opportunity, and we bidded for it and actually won. Oh, great. But that lasted 17 years and 1.5 million lines of code to develop the operating system, which is how we were nominated to become the #1 small business in all of America. Awesome. We actually were cited by the President of the United States, the Congress, and Senator Kerry actually flew a flag over the Capitol on behalf of our company. Well, that's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. Thank you.
So, back to your wife and working together as a husband and wife team. What was her background?
So her background was a computer science degree,
as well,
and then to Dynetics, 8 years as a modeling and simulation programmer.
Okay, good skill sets. You mentioned that you have experience. I think I may have read it in some article in mergers and acquisitions. Did that play a factor in Infinity at some point?
Yes, one of the best ways to grow your companies is to look for opportunities to acquire other companies, of course. You don't want to grow too fast, obviously, but sometimes you find an opportunity where you can acquire someone or some skill set that you want to provide a service to the government. So mainly towards the end of the Infinity career, we actually looked at acquiring companies, and we had an investor from New York, an investment company, and a successful basketball player actually invested. Great. So I started to get into understanding the process, and it always involves networking. It's always in who you know and who knows you. Yes. So we got into acquisitions that way.
Oh, fantastic. Do you recommend acquisitions, and if so, at what point in your business life cycle should you kind of start looking at acquisitions or maybe mergers?
I think what will lead you to make that decision is what you're actually offering. Timing is always important because sometimes a company might bring to you a certain skill set, but their culture might be different. Bringing in their people might cause, problems in your company. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're acquiring another company, but I do recommend it in certain circumstances.
Well, we'd love to hear more. You just hold that thought. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back in a moment with Mr. Guy Juzang.
Huntsville has a rich cross-section of successful entrepreneurs. Hear for yourself how they became leaders. Join us as local innovators share tips, secrets, and the know-how that could help you thrive. The Miranda Show on WAFF 48.
Inspire and achieve. Yes, it's our name, but it's also our goal. Inspiring students to enter the world of mathematics and science and giving them scholarships to be able to achieve their goals. You can be a part of it. Go to inspireandachieve.net. You can volunteer, make a tax-deductible gift, and learn all about Inspire and Achieve. Students in Madison, Limestone, Morgan, and Lawrence counties, go to inspireandachieve.net and see how to apply for a merit-based scholarship up to $5,000. Inspire and Achieve. Join us at inspireandachieve.net.
Welcome back to the show, guys. Tonight, we have our guest here with us, Mr. Guy Juzang, and we're talking about his company, his previous company, Infinity Technology. Welcome back, Guy. All right, guys, so we want to get right into the meat of Infinity Technology. What were some of the struggles and challenges that you faced running that company?
I believe that the personnel factor is always the most challenging aspect of running anything, business, family, whatever. Learning how to motivate the different personalities and keeping everybody moving in the same direction is the most difficult thing there is. However, it is also the most rewarding thing that you can accomplish. So your question again was, I kind of lingered there. Your question again?
Well, just tell us about Infinity Technology and
and the hardest struggles.
The hardest challenges and obstacles.
One struggle I remember was the 2007 to 2009 recession. I heard that was the greatest recession since the Great Depression. But we made it through that, fortunately, because of our faith in God, for one thing, and the fact that we had developed our company in a way that we wanted to give Him glory. For instance, the name of our slogan or motto was endless ingenuity and infinite solutions. And so we knew that wasn't us, so we leaned heavily on our faith to make it through that time frame. That was a serious issue because the banks were being bailed out and they started buying each other. So the regulations and the rules for working with small businesses changed. You remember the auto bailout. There was a difficult time. Fortunately, we made it through that, but that did affect ultimately why we decided to sell.
Okay. So speaking of deciding to sell, we know that growing a company, it's your baby. You've started it from scratch. You've watched it grow. When you made that decision, was it a long thought out, year-long journey to make that decision? What exactly, walk me through that process to finally give up that baby.
As I mentioned about the banks, that really played a key role in our decision because it was harder to get the kind of financing at the level that we were at. We had ultimately 220 employees. And so there was actually a time when we were having the issue of potentially a delayed payroll. And I wanted to throw this in here because it's really a miracle. I actually only knew a guy 3 days, and he invested $500,000 in our company.
Wow.
Yes, because he didn't want me to go through what he had gone through. And he was up in Boston. He was an Eastern Indian. It wasn't of particularly my race or faith, but he resonated with the trauma that I would go through and did that good thing for us. But those are the kinds of things that we had to do to make sure that the bills were paid and the payrolls were met. We have to be creative when you're in a small business.
So I need to circle back with that.
Sure.
So you knew this gentleman for 3 days.
Only 3 days.
And he invested $500,000 into your company.
In our company.
Those are some risky stories. That's a risky thing. So did that pan out in the end?
He was in trouble.
He was in trouble?
He was in trouble with his wife. He was in trouble with his bank because
I'm sure he'd be in trouble with his wife if he wasn't. He would be.
The bank had regulations about loaning money that they had loaned you.
Yes.
he was in trouble with his board. But I knew that he did that not in his own admonition completely. I think that, that was a God thing. He's directing our path. You remember he says, I know the plans I have for you. And that was part of the plan for us. And but ultimately we paid him all back.
Great.
And we were really glad about that. And we have a good friendship even to this day.
Fantastic. Now that's truly a miracle story. Talk to me about the decision to sell. Who was the buyer? Well, you don't have to call their name, but how did you find the buyer? Because a lot of times as small businesses, when we do decide to sell, it's not something you publicly advertise.
True.
It's kind of one of those strategic things.
Exactly.
How did you find your buyer?
Interestingly, my buyer was in Las Vegas. And there was an organization called CEO Space where CEOs would meet. And that wouldn't have been my choice of cities or a way to get financing. But as I said earlier, you have to be creative to keep your company going. So I went out there, I participated in a conference, and actually I can say that as we reached the end of the conference, my time was running out to meet somebody. And I hadn't met anyone. And at the very end, I met one person that I knew. And I asked the Lord, actually, I said, Lord, don't give me a lot of choices. Just give me the one person. You make it clear, definitive. And he did. And that person bought the company. And that's when we started the mergers and acquisitions, actually. And getting some money to go to the next level.
Wow. So this buyer, did you have any regrets with giving up the baby, or how did you feel about that maybe a year afterwards?
I did not, actually. 23 years was long enough. There were nights when I woke up when I actually had sweated out a t-shirt because of some challenges.
Yes.
A lot of people think being in small business, owning a small business is glamorous, and it has its perks, but it also has its demands. And at certain points, you could lose everything, family relationships even. So the main key for us was persevering, to never give up, to keep our faith, and to make sure we had the right personnel on our team. Having talented and passionate people is good. However, they might not be the right fit. And that's one of the challenges that we have in small businesses, is to make sure we hire the right people, that they sync with our culture.
Yes.
And also timing. Sometimes the person can be the right person, but it's not the right time.
Not the right time.
So
as we're talking with students and budding entrepreneurs, what does that look like for them to be prepared for a company like a Logicor or an Infinity or any of the defense companies? How can they better be in a position? What did you see that you wanted but couldn't get from the students?
I think for a student, I would make sure that if I'm not a sanguine, a person who really likes people, the life of the party type, I would force myself to join maybe a club, a speaking club, because one of the greatest fears in life is speaking, of course. But if you force yourself through your fears and develop a personality that likes people, that wants to help others, I think that will play an important role in you discerning whether in the future for your business, whether that person is a good person for your company. Understanding personalities is really important.
We're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be back in a moment. We'll be right back after the break with our next guest, Mr. Jay Newkirk.
Inspire and achieve. Yes, it's our name, but it's also our goal. Inspiring students to enter the world of mathematics and science and giving them scholarships to be able to achieve their goals. You can be a part of it. Go to inspireandachieve.net. You can volunteer, make a tax-deductible gift, and learn all about Inspire and Achieve. Students in Madison, Limestone, Morgan, and Lawrence counties, go to inspireandachieve.net and see how to apply for a merit-based scholarship up to $5,000. Inspire and Achieve. Join us at inspireandachieve.net.
Does anybody have any questions for Jay? Now
I wanted to
that
say
we're off
something.
camera, we're more comfortable.
I would like to say something to the young people who are here. You're all from Girls Inc., right?
Yes,
Well, let me tell you, I was a youngster when I got involved in the space program. we have a new dream, we have a new mission. And basically what it is we're going back to the moon, not to just explore for a little while, we're going to stay. We found that there's ice on the moon and we're going to be able to sustain us, so we're going to build a base. So there's a whole new dream for space exploration. So I'd like those of you who are interested in STEM education, think about it, because I'm going to try to stay alive until we go to Mars. Because see, I've been around a long time, but it's going to be you all that's going to take us there. So I want to encourage you to think about what you can do to support that activity, because it's critical. And I'm the chairman of the board of Energy Huntsville, and guess what one of the big challenges is? We're going to put a space station around the moon, and the energy in that space station is going to be key to a lunar lander to get down to the moon and take the astronauts and the material to build a base there. So I'm telling you, we got some exciting future coming.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It
is very exciting.
I would love to talk about that sometime in another show if you want to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
I think I'd like to encourage these young people to get involved.
Absolutely.
We need their help.
Can you, just real quick for the young people in the show, Girls Inc., can you share with them what are some of those STEM areas? I know Lisa hit on it just a little bit, talking about the different areas. What are just some of the, engineering or
Yeah, she did a great job of talking about it. It doesn't matter what it is you're excited about. It probably comes into the category of STEM, because everything you do has to do with chemistry or engineering or, or science. The thing that some of you, have you heard the word calculus? Yeah. When I went to school, I had no idea what that was. I studied it and I got through it. But when I got to NASA and we realized that we had to launch this Saturn V rocket into orbit, there was all kinds of STEM things going on. We're talking about modeling and simulation, talking about figuring out a way to save these astronauts in case the rocket blew up. So I was leading a team during the Apollo days called the Abort and Alternate Mission Studies team. So we were failing engines and actuators. You remember the little rocket on the nose of the Saturn V? We had the red button for that. If that thing was going to break up, we got them off. So what are you going to study that's of interest to you? I don't know, whatever your hot button is, I think it plays. I'm not going to always push everybody toward technology necessarily, but I had a liberal arts education. I'm really a people person. I came here in the middle of all these rocket scientists. I mean, here I was, a little guy from Lynchburg College, and these guys were renowned. And guess what? The liberal arts education I had, the kind of thing you all are getting in Girls Inc., meeting people and communicating well, is the key to my success, because these engineers could solve problems, but you had to define it for them. I was good at that. So I succeeded nicely in this program because I could communicate it well. So you all just think about that while you're mixing with your friends and you're studying. Just think about the fact that whoever you're talking to, you need to figure out what they're thinking about, who they are, and how you can help them. The key to success has to do with how many people you help, not how much money you made.
All right, well, very well said. Thank you so much, Jack.
Thanks for watching our show today, and make plans to join us next week for another riveting conversation with leaders and innovators right here on The Miranda Show.